Welcome, everybody. This is the Fall Line with Chaos and Company. We have a great episode here for you. Angelo and I have wanted to have Jim Shaw on for a while. We were lucky enough for Jim to be in the East. We're on the same time zone. And Jim, welcome. Thank you so much for being here. And what all makes this happen to have people like Jim here is Angelo and I have some great supporters and friends of the podcast. We have Blizzard Technica, who has been supporting us almost since the beginning, Angelo. And they continue, though. They're on again for another season, which is so awesome. We got skis in the mail, they're telling us, and we're looking forward to that, some boots. And then also, once we get them boots, we'll be shooting over to Mount Snow to see Nick Blaylock over at Nick's Boot Fitting at Mount Snow. Nick does a super job there and has been super supportive of us, myself and Angelo. And I know Amanda jumps over there and gets her boots done usually when Angelo comes up. And also Rollerblade and Miles Cotter Sparrow has been super good to get us on some gear and get us out there having some fun on the rollerblades preparing. So thanks everybody there for supporting. We're psyched everybody out there is listening, and we had a great first episode already, which was really cool. We're on number 2, and we have not just a tele examiner here, but an Alpine examiner. And Jim, thanks so much for being here. It's so cool to have you, man.
Well, thanks for having me. It's good to be here.
Cool. And Angelo's here. Angelo's been a busy man. He's been working hard for PSIA-AASI, and he's got Zoom. I was on a Zoom the other night like this with him, and I think you had about 3 or 4 calls already, and they weren't 1-hour Zoom calls, were they, Angelo?
Well, that day we had the steering committee call. Yeah, I think that was number 7 for that day. That was a long day in the saddle.
Yeah, I can tell you, Jim, Angelo is absolutely looking forward to snow. So hopefully the Zoom will shut down because everybody wants to be on snow. But that's kind of my first question for you, Jim, is what have you been up to this summer and fall? And what have you been doing to prepare for the ski season?
Well, that would depend on whether you mean what do I do to prepare physically for the ski season, which is the way I think people generally take that question, or what do I do to prepare otherwise? The otherwise is a much more, maybe a more interesting answer. But, from the standpoint of preparing for ski season, I don't have any specific tasks or training regimens that I go through. I keep in shape by rock climbing and mountain biking. And, I'd like to say I water ski, but I was so busy building a house this summer that I never got around to building a house for myself, and I got really busy, and I'm getting close to the point where I can move in, but not quite yet. But as far as the other side of it goes, it's like we have tele task force meetings every other week. We've been working on how to create the alignment that's been in the process for every region, to get together with that kind of stuff. And so that stuff's been going on, and trying to organize those things. That would be, it's kind of the scariest thing about ski season, I think, as it comes up, at least from the standpoint of, so I'm the chairperson, so I'm sort of in charge of the Rocky Mountain side of Telemark. And this time of the year, I'm always wondering, it's like, okay, fall training's coming up. What are we going to do? What are we going to share with all the ed staff, and what's happening? And some of that stuff doesn't get finalized until the last minute, but I've been thinking about it for months. So anyway, I think it's coming together, but it always seems to happen that way. So from that standpoint of preparing for ski season, and then there's organizing gear, and, thinking, what do I want? And there's new skis out. And I know you guys are Blizzard Technica, but I'm kind of a Rossi guy, and so from the Rossi standpoint, it's one of those deals where it's like, what skis do I want? It's like, oh, they got new skis. I don't know if I want those new skis. I haven't tried them out yet. I'm not too sure about this. Do I want to slap bindings on them? What if I hate them? Which doesn't happen to me very often, but it does once in a while.
Yeah.
So anyway, that's kind of the gist of it.
So, and Jim, for everyone to know out there, our listeners, if they don't know who you are, I know in the tele world, man, I'm not sure there's anybody in the country that doesn't know Jim. Jim, you've been on the national team multiple terms as a telemark skier for us here in the U.S. You're also in the Rocky Mountain as a telemark examiner and an Alpine examiner. As you said, you're the chair there for the telemark crew. And I couldn't find exactly. Is it 3 terms or 2 terms? You've been on the team for a while.
Two terms with a term off in the middle. So I was on the team first in 2016. I actually had plans to try out for 8 years before that, and things got in the way. One time I broke my ankle. I broke my ankle a month before tryouts, and so I didn't get to go.
Yeah.
So I made the team in 2016, and then again in 2021 after the 5-year team.
Yeah.
So the last 3 years, and then the last time around, I just, you hit a point where I just kind of thought, all right, I've done what I wanted to do, and it's time to step back or step down from that. I don't know if it's step back, but step into a different direction maybe is a better way to say it.
Yeah. Yeah, because you're busy. I mean, you're active, obviously, as the chair and in the tele examiner world and that with PSA Rocky Mountain, and you have been in Rocky Mountain and working with them for a long time. You're also an Alpine examiner for Rocky Mountain, so busy with that. What else have I missed? Because I know you're on the task forces. I know you're on the tele task force and that, so very involved. It's like you said, maybe stepping down from trying out again and being on the team, but there's a lot you're still contributing and for PSA.
Well, from the PSIA standpoint, I'm also on the senior task force, and that's a pretty interesting place to be. And those things are coming along, and we're going to have to see where they go. I wish I was more actively involved in that, but I would say that I do keep abreast of what's happening, and what's happening with sort of an alignment and a possible senior specialist, national specialist kind of a certification thing. I do keep abreast of what's going on. I'm not as active in that, but that has to do with, I'm not just an Alpine examiner. I'm also on the Alpine committee for Rocky Mountain. So I spend a lot of time going to meetings and listening to it and finding out what's going on, and organizing things that help our Alpine side move forward as well as the Telemark side, and then we have to update all our materials each summer and trying to, herd the cats together to get them to put the work in. So everything's looking the way it's supposed to be. And I'm happy on the tele side and the Alpine side, but I'm happy on the tele side in Rocky Mountain. It's like we have a really great crew, and we put together some pretty quality materials, and the fact that I'm on the Alpine side sets the bar for me. It makes me look and go, tele's not going to be, we're not playing second fiddle to Alpine. It's like we want to be, we want our edge staff materials or our education materials, our certification materials to be up to date and clear. And, it's not, it's to us, it's a very respected discipline. Even if it doesn't generate as much business as say Alpine or snowboard does, it's still a very respected thing. And so we want to be very professional along those lines also. And, it's something that I truly love. So.
Yeah. And you have done something I think is really super cool, and with the support of your CEO in Rocky Mountain, and you have encouraged and have been for years. I don't know how many years now, but I've heard you for a lot of years going, when you come to our Eastern training and like you need to come to Rocky Mountain training next fall, we're inviting everybody. You have a ton of ed staff from across the country come to Rocky Mountain training in the fall, and I was lucky enough to go last year, and I'll be there this fall again because it was so awesome. But it really goes along with the alignment process of getting the group together, as many staff members across the country. And I know your goal is, because I've heard you say it, that you want to have, it would be amazing to have all the ed staff in the tele world at Rocky Mountain training to be together. And I'm just curious how you got this started, and just chat about it a little bit, because I think it's one of the coolest things I've seen someone do to push forward our education and our commitment to the alignment. Well,
one thing that I can say about it, and I think this is pretty cool right now. It has been for the last couple of years, probably the largest. It's probably I don't know if I can say this for sure, but I think it's might be the largest telemark PSIA event in the country. So we had, I don't know if we had 30, but we had at least 29, and it might have been 30 last year. And that's ed staff from around the country. And so it's kind of a lengthy answer to the question that you're asking. And it goes all the way back to alignment, and when Dave Schuling was the education director for Rocky Mountain. And they wanted to go out and start to share some thoughts and visit some other regions at staff trainings and audit some exams and see what's going on in other regions. And he went out with Jonathan Ballou, and so that became more formalized, and especially on the Alpine side, and Rocky formally asked with support, meaning, paying for lodging and things like that, if ed staff from around the country was interested in attending our Alpine ed staff, and so tying that in with what I said about us not wanting to play second fiddle, every time I hear that the Alpine side is going to do something, I go, don't tell me we're not doing it. If you guys are doing that, we're doing it. And so, I got the go ahead to invite people. And then I started to, Dana Forbes, our CEO, our executive director, she started to, she sort of, I don't know if she knew what she was saying when she opened the door, and said that she didn't put any limits on it, and I kind of said, no limits. She goes, no. It's like, how many are going to come? And I go, oh, that's what I wanted to hear. So I've been all in since then, and Rocky supports a lot of it. And we'll see where that goes. I think it would be great. I mean, we've been doing that, and it's been growing for probably, I don't know, 6 years, 8 years or something like that, and it started with just a few people attending and joining, and then they got more serious and more people attended. And I think from the East, there was about six or seven people coming this year,
Yeah,
so
we've got at least 5, and I'd like to say 6, but I know Jay Nation might say when he's at Rocky training now, I'm from Rocky, so
yeah, that might happen. But anyway, and I know if Northern Rocky Mountain sends down they had 3 attend last year, and at least 1 or 2 from the Intermountain side, and a couple for sure I already know of from Western, and I'm not sure yet about Central, but they're coming from a lot of different places. And my vision with that is, first off, it's about putting telemarketers together on the hill. And I think one of the biggest things, because we're engaged in something that I think other disciplines are casually engaged in. Maybe freestyle would be the one I would point to the most that gets engaged in that, trying to promote the discipline a bit. And telemarket's gone through its ebbs and flows, as I'm sure anybody who pays attention much to telemark would know. It's like, yeah, we are the original discipline. I mean, people have been telemarking for more than 1,000 years, but it goes through its ebbs and flows, its ups and downs. And there was that thing that got thrown out a number of years ago, about, is telemark dead? And it's like, well, they've tried to kill us before. It hasn't worked. It keeps going on, and there's been changes to equipment. I mean, our equipment has evolved more in the last 10 or 15 years than any sport has, any of the disciplines have, I think. So, it goes up and down, and, the birth of uphill travel and more randonnée kind of gear, touring gear and stuff like that, changed things a little bit. And then all of a sudden some people said, oh, I don't need telemark anymore. I'll just use this Alpine touring gear, AT gear. You know what AT stands for, right?
No.
Almost telemark.
Almost telemark. Oh, I love it.
Randonnée, that's French for can't telemark. So got to throw the humor in there,
Absolutely.
Anyway, it didn't work. And although my information is anecdotal right at the moment, I think telemark is growing again. And you're seeing that with people wanting to attend the Rocky Mountain training. I mean, the one advantage we have is we get snow early. Or at least cold enough weather to make snow early, although holy cows, it's been warm lately. It has not been cold. But it'll come. And so, my goal was to put more people together and more telemarketers on the hill, and in a sense, share the love and the camaraderie and get people talking about it and thinking about it. And, if we become visible, I think that's one of the biggest things, and as you see a bunch of, really good telemarketers coming down the hill, people look and go, that's pretty cool. I'd like to give that a try, and then they attend a festival, or they find some way to take a lesson or to learn how to do it or get the gear or do what they have to do. And that's been my whole plan with bringing the ed staff together from across country, to just create that enthusiasm for telemark and get people together. So, 1 becomes 2 and 2 become 4 or 4 become 8, and it increases exponentially that way. And that's kind of the goal, to get more people involved and more people talking and going with it. So
it's working. It's after work. Angelo's going to be there. Angelo's coming.
I think it is working, actually. So I don't know if you were talking about Angelo working with, Zoom calls and PSA and so on. Dave Schuling he's a level 3 certified telemark instructor. You know that our president of the board, Angel, help me out. I do. I open my mouth and then I draw a blank, right?
Oh, Eliza.
Eliza.
Yeah.
Eliza's a telemarker.
Yeah.
All right. Yep. I got her a pair of boots. Was it last fall and stuff? And she set up and she got into the NTNs and new boots, and so, it's, I don't know if it's going to take over the wolf, but it's catching on and people are thinking about it again. And, so that's the plan.
Yeah. And I want to know how this enthusiasm just for skiing, like, where did it start? What was Jim Shaw's first experience on snow?
Okay. Jim Shaw's first experience on snow was at a place in the Allegheny Mountains in New York State. I grew up, my family's mostly from New York, New Jersey area. I was actually born in New Jersey. Only lived there till I was about 2 or 3, something like that. And then we lived in the south of Buffalo. And about the time that I was 5, my parents went on a ski week with a very good friend of my dad's. And they came back and they went up to Vermont. They came back, and I don't know if it was that season or the following season, but they decided they were going to get their kids skiing. So I remember going down to the Allegheny Mountains at a place called Grosstall. And you'd have to be a pretty old Eastern skier to remember Grosstall. It became Ski Wing or Wing Hollow after a while. And it's closed down since then. But anyway, the first skiing experience I have, and it's very, very distinct in my mind. It's out behind the chairlift shack, on a little hill, learning from my mother and, a good friend of the family. So, I mean, good enough that this was my Uncle Max and my Aunt Gail kind of thing, with my mother and my Aunt Gail and her son and me and my brother. And all I remember is my mother going, "You can't go up the chairlift until you learn how to snowplow." That's all. Why can't we just go up? It's like, you can't go up the chairlift till you learn how to snowplow. And that is without a doubt my first memory. And then we also spent a lot of time skiing at what is now, I guess, Kissing Bridge North, which is used to be Glenwood Acres. So we got I had a T-bar ticket. I remember those days. I remember having my leather gloves on and they were soaking wet. Holding onto the T-bar, and somebody falls down in front of you. It's like, oh no, what am I going to do? Not a T-bar. I mean a rope tow. I meant to say rope tow, not a T-bar. But those are the experiences that I remember. And to be honest with you, I will say I do remember my parents buying me. They bought me a private lesson at Glenwood Acres. I absolutely hated it. I mean, never again.
Yeah.
But I could go back with more professional experience at this time. I could actually go back to that and I know exactly what it was and the reason I didn't like it. So,
yeah. Angela, it's always fun to hear the first experiences on snow, isn't it? It's so awesome.
Mm-hmm.
It's funny what sticks in people's heads too. Like,
yeah.
Mom telling you no.
Mm-hmm. You can't go up the chairlift until you know how to snowplow.
Oh man, it's super cool. I love it. It's actually we started the podcast asking that question because I was curious, and it's amazing how cool it is. And then I've had so many people of any questions I ask on a podcast, it's always that question there of how people started. Because we kind of tease and like it's unbelievable that Hafer Billy started learning how to ski in college or after college. It's like, are you kidding me, dude? I'm going to start like when I'm 24 and then I'm going to go all the way to the national team in like 4 years. I mean, unreal.
He figured it out.
Yes, he figured it out. Hafer figured it out. I still want to know. I don't know, Jim, if you know that Dixon, Mr. Greg Dixon is a wrestler from way back, and so is Hafer. So there was a duel there when we each had them on separate podcasts. That they kind of put a challenge out to the other one. And Angela and I heard, I don't think Angela was there, but we heard the wrestling match started, but we didn't hear a lot of like really who won.
They both said they won.
Yeah,
I do know they were both college wrestlers. So,
Yes. They definitely have that competitive side, so they both were ready to go, and not so we'll have to keep that one going because I want to see that one in person.
yeah.
I bet it would be pretty impressive. So how did it develop from there, Jim? Was it like you had to be on the hill? You had your rope tow ticket. You said, did you have to be on the hill every weekend after the school?
We were 5 or 6 days a year skiers, maybe, kind of thing, all the way through high school. And actually, high school, I bet I took a guess, and I'm not sure if it's accurate, but my guess is that I skied about 5 days in 4 years of high school. And but I did play basketball almost 365 days a year. And then I got out of, so like I said, I was a skier. I could go down the hill. I had absolutely no idea the kind of things that we would teach. They didn't mean anything to me at that time. And then I went to college my first year, and I sort of started playing some college basketball, but I just didn't like it. It lost everything. It wasn't with friends of mine. It was competitive amongst your teammates, not just competitive amongst, between your team and other teams. And it wasn't with people that I spent any time with outside of the basketball. And so I went to a 2-year school in Rochester, New York, and left that and went to SUNY Cortland and tried out for basketball again, and just still didn't like it, And so I started skiing more often. And then my first year at SUNY Cortland, my grandmother bought me a nights and weekends pass. And if you know that, Great Peak is only about 8 miles down the road from SUNY Cortland. So I started, even if it was just a couple hours at a time, I started skiing more like 50 days a year. And because, once you got the pass, that's the thing that I think some people, instructors all know that, but, the average person doesn't realize that. Skiing seems like it's expensive. But if you got a pass, all of a sudden it changes everything. Even if you had to pay some bucks for the pass, you can go as many times as you want. If the skiing's not good, you can, go home and come back tomorrow. And so I started skiing about 50 days a year. And then I graduated. I was a phys ed major in college. And so teaching skiing wasn't nearly as far off as it, although it's really not the sort of career track you expect to have. But I came up to the Adirondacks, actually to the place that I'm at right now, which is my dad's place, and spent the winter, and I got a job working at Paleface Bassett Mountain. That's another one you have to be around for a long time to remember that place. I drove by it today, but it hasn't been a ski area for, I want to say, more than 35 years, and maybe 40 years. And the guy who was the ski school director looked at me and said, well, you ever think about teaching skiing? And I said, well, I don't know if I'm that good. And he said, well, come on out. We open on Wednesday. I went out, took a couple of runs. He goes, I have a job for you. And he gave me a job teaching skiing. And it's like, it never occurred to me that I was going to do this. He told me about certification, and then you could become an examiner and everything else. It's like, oh, I'm definitely doing that. And I mean, I haven't missed a season since, as a professional instructor. I think I've only had one season. I did go back to graduate school after about 8 or 9 years for recreation. So I was a phys ed and recreation major. So, I mean, teaching skiing is right up my alley. And, I went back and I kind of taught, but I did that year. I taught at Great Peak again part-time because I was back at Cortland, and I taught skiing at Winter Park as well. So my full-time year as a graduate student, I taught 39 days of skiing in Winter Park, Colorado. I once taught a private lesson till 11 o'clock in the morning and slept in my bed at New York that night.
Oh God, I love it. Oh. And so you haven't mentioned, but I assume it was Alpine first. And then when did Telemark Skiing come into it, or was it Tele first?
No, it was Alpine first. Although, I did tell you about where I started. It was Alpine first, but it was lace-up leather boots and cable binding. So the heels did come up a little bit. But they had those little clips, if you guys remember those little clips that went over the springs and kind of held your heel down. Yeah, I saw. But that was true all the way till my first year teaching skiing. And that was, like I said, that was at Paleface Bassett Mountain in Jay, New York, about 5 miles from Whiteface. And this guy, Larry was his name, he had a pair of Edspin T-Marks, and they looked like they were about 50 something underfoot and metal edge cross country skis, and I had something that was a glorified low top basketball shoe, and 3-pin. I mean, full on 3-pin bindings, not just cables in the back, but they were only held down with 3 pins and heel locators. And he goes, "It's Telemark." I go, "The hell's Telemark?" And so that was in the 81, 82 winter. So I could tell you that my first time telemarking was definitely on those skis that winter. Didn't really have any idea what I was doing. And then, and I would do it occasionally here and there, take those out, and ski a little bit up till, sometime around maybe, as a guess, I'm going to say 1995 or so, so I'd ski a little in those boots. And then, a friend of mine talked me into, getting a pair of, Scarpa Terminators.
Yeah.
So I had like the first generation of plastic boots when I started getting more serious about it. And, so I put those on, and then I started telemarking 50 days a year, and, started going through the certification process, over the first couple of years. And just kept going.
Yeah. So did you move on to the ed staff in both disciplines in similar time, or was Alpine first, then Tele, or?
I actually think they were very, very close to the same time. So it kind of seesawed one to the other.
Yeah.
I went to Alpine in Rocky Mountain. We had Rocky Mountain Trainer, and you can have Rocky Mountain Trainer at Telemark, Rocky Mountain Trainer in Alpine. And I was definitely a Rocky Mountain Trainer Alpine before Telemark, but I may have been a Telemark ed staff before I was an Alpine ed staff.
Yeah.
And I did have years when I went to those levels, those like trainer and education staff, tryouts or interviews or selections or whatever you want to call them. I mean, I went to both of them in the same year. When most people are busy preparing and hoping they can get through one, it's like, nah, I'm a glutton. I went for both, so, but like I said, it was, that was 30 years ago. So I can't remember exactly how it is, but they weren't far off. I mean, like within this 1 or 2 years, I was involved in both. So,
yeah. And I was doing the same thing. I picked up Telemark when I started teaching skiing. So I started going through my certs very similar, and ed staff was pretty much the same years as I was going up the ladder. And so I'm curious for you, what your thoughts on how one helps the other. Did you feel like one helped the other? Did one help the other more, or were they very different, each one developing your skill set in each for you?
Well, it's an interesting question, because Telemark at the time that I was going through certification and then trainer certification kind of stuff, ed staff. Although, there's certainly a lot of performance in Telemark. At that time, there was still Merrill Super Comps were on there. For those who don't know, it's a leather boot with a plastic cuff, and there were still people skiing in Exolo streams. Yep. And like I said, I was in, if you put on a pair of those Terminators nowadays, you go, how do you ski in these things? Because they're kind of a high top cuff, but it's a pretty soft boot compared to an Alpine boot, which is kind of true with, a Scarpa these days, but not nearly as much so. And so, I think they helped each other, but they were definitely probably more different at that time. But what you did have, the way that I've always said it, and I still say this to this day, is that Alpine kind of hangs a carrot out in front of your Telemark. I know the kind of performance I can get out of an Alpine boot and an Alpine ski. And it's like, I want to get that performance out of my Telemark gear. And maybe that's not going to happen. But then there's the other side of it. There's a softness in Telemark that you cannot get in Alpine. Just because of the range of motion, because you have more joints in play and more joints flexing. It's like, what do you want your Alpine skiing? It's like, I want the softness and the flow that I can get from my Telemark ski. And that's hard to get. So I think they complement each other along those lines. Alpine's the carrot that hangs out free in front of Telemark. And, the other way around, the softness I get out of Telemark, and the more natural kind of, it's, we put one foot in front of the other, And
I felt very much the same way. I felt it helped my versatility because of that freedom of movement on my tele skis. And back then we were on super different in my view of what we are on today. We were on narrow skis, barely changing over to sort of kind of like more of an Alpine narrow ski. But like you said, the boots, I was in that super comp. That was like my first real tele boot. And I had the red cuff. I didn't have the one with the white cuff. I had the red cuff with the leather lower, and man, those things would be wet every day. I remember my gaiters. I still have that pair of boots, and the gaiters are still on them. And Angelo, that's why I believe that you're really enjoying tele, because you love that almost artistry or that freedom, that creativity kind of thing, like from skateboarding and that. And you talk about that creativity in skiing. The better you get, man, the more you're going to enjoy it. As Jim describes, that's the feelings I get.
What I really like about Telemark is that a lot of my Alpine beliefs are built on a foundation of understanding the biology of bipedalism, because I taught biology for 20 years. And one of my areas of interest in biology was human evolutionary biology and how bipedalism evolved and that sort of thing. So if you study that, it doesn't take long until you're learning about different gaits, like a walking gait versus a running gait and that sort of thing. And Telemark Skiing just really, really scratches that itch for me. There's so much similarity to walking. Like when I'm teleing well, I feel like I'm walking down the hill, and you can. Alpine's a little more abrupt. I really liked your description, Jim, of how Telemark is softer. That's true. And I really enjoy how the word that pops into my head when I think about Telemark is that it's anatomical, in the sense that it really respects the way your body evolved to move. And I really like that aspect of it. Not only how it feels, but just thinking about the intellectual piece of understanding how close sliding down this mountain is to walking down this mountain. That I don't know if that makes any sense to anybody but me, but that's what I think about.
Well, I add into that the range of motion that you have vertically, because you're, at your toes or your met heads, you have that flexibility that comes in as well. And I have a thing that I tell people, and it seems like this is a perfect time for me to say it when people ask me about why do you telemark, and a lot of it, like I said, has to do with the softness. And I appreciate my platform right here to be able to share this so that maybe other people will share this. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to put our ski boots on, we're going to go over there to the tables and chairs in that plaza area at the base of the mountain, got the concrete pavers underneath it or the hard ground. And we're going to climb up on a table and we're going to jump off. So you want your Alpine boots on or you want your Telemark boots on? And even the people who have never put on a pair of Telemark boots in their entire life know the answer to that one. The snowboarders say, I want my snowboard boots on. Right. It's like, okay, I give you that. But that's the softness and the range of motion that I have vertically, and coupled with the idea that, like Angelo says, I put one foot in front of the other and I have this range of motion to be soft as I come through. That's what I love about Telemark. And I will tell you that the older I get, and I'm not convinced, I am not at all convinced. We talk about how to get more young people telemarketing. I'm not at all convinced that it's just a young person sport. I mean, people have been skiing and they're 40, 50 years old. They're accomplished skiers, and, you want to try something different that you might really enjoy. Sure. It's going to you're going to take a step back for a little bit. But it's the kind of thing where it's like with my joints in motion, the impact on my body is considerably less. And I really, really like that. So.
And speaking of that one foot in front of the other, the lead change is what really separates us in terms of, because of our free heel and our range of motion. I just wanted Jim to talk a little bit about lead change and in terms of, how you feel lead change has maybe evolved. Is it the same in your view? And how you apply it, or in any situation. I'm just in versatility bumps or just in general, what's Jim Shaw's view of lead change? I ask that because for me, when I go from my Alpine gear to my Tele, people go, how do you put it on after, unfortunately, sometimes it's a month or two when Alpine gets really crazy. And then I get my Tele gear on. It takes me a run or two, but I really focus for me on the lead change, like how that's flowing in the way I think. I'm just curious your thoughts on that.
So my belief on the lead change is historically, the lead change, it's always been there to establish 4F balance. So when one foot is in front of the other, you expand your platform fore and aft. However, if you go back, and I don't mean back a long ways, to the start of my Telemark career and even maybe a little before, but in that meaning, 30, 40 years, that kind of stuff. When you say you take your outside foot or your right foot and move it forward and your left foot moves back, biomechanically and from a physics standpoint, you are creating a rotational force when you do that. And I'm convinced that would have had a lot to do going back hundreds of years, when people were skiing with twisted birch bark bindings and things like that, that ability to create that rotation would matter. In modern and more contemporary telemark, I won't deny that rotation probably takes place, but I would say that most of the time in modern contemporary telemark, the goal is to reduce that rotational force. Some of it's done through not creating counter rotation, but a countered movement with the upper body. So the lower body is turning below the upper body, which is similar to what happens in Alpine. But we cannot get away from the fact that we don't just turn our legs. We also have the outside foot moving forward and the inside foot moving back. So I think that the primary reason for the lead change in contemporary telemark, meaning modern telemark, NTN boots, and the stuff that we're mostly skiing in these days. The primary reason for that is just simply 4F balance, 4F stability. And also, consequently, and this is a question that is asked all the time in certification exams and clinics and PSIA, everything you can imagine. It's like, well, where does the lead change occur? In other words, where do the feet pass each other in the turn? And I mean, if you ask it in a generic sense, it's hilarious because you're going to get the answer that everybody hates so much. Well, it depends. Oh, great. But if you think about it in relation to the edge change, which is this is how I describe it most of the time. As the edge changes, you start to build up, the snow starts to push against the skis. You start to create that pushback of the snow, which is actually what's causing people to turn. That's the ski snow interaction piece. And as you do that, we start to make a lead change as the pressures are building and the snow is pushing against us. So as the skis are coming more across the hill, the lead change may be increasing as much as it needs to just to manage the fore-aft stability piece. As opposed to taking the lead change and making a rapid, hard lead change that puts a lot of rotational force in there. I'm trying to create a lead change that manages the stability in the fore-aft sense. And it can be relatively large and relatively low, but it can also be very, very slight, depending on what you need at any given time. And although I think that when we teach telemark skiers, we need to encourage them to make enough lead change, as they move on. And I've heard this, it's interesting. I've heard this because I've said it too. And I've heard Greg Dixon say it before about I don't really think about my lead change, to be honest with you. I know it's there and I'm aware of it, but I don't try to plan where it's going to happen. I say all the time, I don't find my lead change finds me. In other words, it occurs in the place in the skiing where it needs to be, not where I've chosen to make it. Now, that being said, in order to learn how to do it better, you have to be able to put it in different places. In other words, artificially practice it in different ways, just like we do with everything, let me see you turn your skis all the way till they're after the fall line and then tip them on the edge. Let me see you tip them on the edge and then start to turn them. All kinds of different, drills and exercises that we have. But when you think about it, I use the telemark lead change as needed for that 4F stability piece. And there's times, for instance, in bumps, when I'm coming into things and I look and go, don't lead change now. That would be a bad idea. One foot in front of the other is not a good thing right at the moment because it's also going to limit, if you picture as you one foot goes in front of the other, it limits the rotational ability, the quickness to be able to pivot your skis. So coming out of the, and that's another piece. I don't know if I told you this, Dave, but you can get me going, and you might not get me to stop.
I'm listening, man. I'm just taking it in.
But there's another piece to the lead change that I think is almost never talked about, and I would refer to that as the unlead change. It's not just making the lead change; it's making the lead change go away. Yeah. And then using your timing. It depends, but using the timing of when is the lead change needed again. Because I don't know if you ever noticed, when you're in the line, waiting for the chairlift, Telemark skiers don't stand around in a Telemark stance. I mean, they may do for the fun of it once in a while, but I mean, that's not their normal stance. They stand with their feet side by side. So use the lead change for what it can give you and do for you, not just because you can. Right? And this guy would probably hate me for it if he happens to listen to the podcast. So I won't give out his name, but I remember he ended up being certified, level 3 certified Alpine snowboard in Telemark. Very athletic guy. And before his level 3 Alpine or Telemark exam, he asked me, he says, "Do I have to make a lead change when I'm in the bumps?" And I said, "Why?" And he goes, "I don't think I need to." And I said, "All right, here's the standard. On solid double black diamond fall line bumps, you need to make about 25 turns in the fall line. And I can accept that maybe you change lines once or twice, and it's Telemark. There's going to be a bobble here and there, but you should be able to do this pretty consistently, some rhythm and flow in the fall line. But you said you don't need it. It's like, just ski it all Alpine." And he went down 10 turns and wham, right on his face. Got up 10 more turns, wham, right on his face. Didn't talk to me for 2 weeks. He was so pissed off. And I go, "Yeah, you went on your face because you don't have the 4F stability that the Telemark movement affords you." And that's, so from a standpoint of what does it mean today, it's like that's the primary reason for it.
Yeah.
So maybe
the initials wouldn't be DS for that, would they?
No, they weren't. Well, I know what DS also stands for at that particular time, maybe. Yeah, but
no,
but
D is in Dave. DS.
No, it was not.
No,
No, it was
all right. Just checking.
Jim, when you say you talk about unlead change,
mm-hmm.
do you mean skiing parallel or skiing Alpine on tele skis, or
no,
automark,
I mean,
or every aspect of
it's going from the point at which you have the biggest fore-aft separation to the point where you have no separation, or you're more in a side-by-side Alpine kind of stance. And realizing that coming out of if you get stuck in the Telemark, you're going to reduce some of your ability. You're going to be less quick in a Telemark stance as far as pivoting your skis and turning, and like in places like bumps and off-piste conditions. So if you want to make shorter turns, being able to come out of or unlead change, in other words, come back out of the lead change, and paying attention to that. And when you get into a lead change that's, a huge lead change, 1 foot in front of the other, very low stance. You give it a try. It's a pretty stable place to be. Not an easy place to turn and ski from, but it's a stable place to be. So in order to get yourself going back in the other direction, in a sense, after one lead change, is coming out of the lead change, and being aware that coming back to an Alpine stance or a side-by-side stance, that's what's going to enable you to have versatility and options for a moment. And then using the lead change. Sometimes in the bumps, it's a matter of you turn the skis, I come down the hill and I wait all the way till I'm going to hit the bump, and then it's wham, and I'm right back out of it again. And it literally is only for a second when I need the stability as the bump's pushing against me, as opposed to getting stuck in it. So what I really mean by the unlead change is coming back out of it, and being ready to do that. And maybe the things that you do in the way that one moves that causes them to sometimes get stuck in that lead change.
Okay. Thanks for clarifying.
I figured you'd enjoy that, Angelo, man. It's the lead change is the thing, man. And it's super cool that it, as Jim said, we practice it a million ways. Mr. Mickey Stone has had me for years and years, and all the team fast, slow. And I know John Tittle hate the old when we call the delayed lead change, but we've done it a million ways, and it's just versatility. And I know it in Levy, one of the big things was that you brought there was talking about performance skiing. But what do you consider performance skiing? And you guys had a really cool, which I liked, view of what we were saying was part of performance skiing. I don't know if you want to chat about that a little bit.
Oh, I love, that's one of my favorite topics. So yeah, when Keith and I were in Levy, we talked, and Greg talked with us for quite a while about what we wanted to do. And I think we agreed. I'm certain that I felt this way, but I think that we agreed that in the United States, performance skiing is not just carving. It's not just racing. It's not how much you can tip the ski on the edge and make the ski bend. There's lots of situations, and I was, my favorite thing to do is absolutely off piste. I mean, I'll go off piste every chance I get. I'd rather ski bumps and crud and stuff like that any day. And when you get into that, carving's not always the best choice. Sometimes skidding's a better idea, and making a rounder, skiddy. Maybe it's a little on the braking side, and steep faces, where it's like getting some control of what's going on, through some braking action is not a bad thing. And so what we decided on, and they didn't really give us the terrain to do that, so is that Keith was going to take the ski down the hill. He's the U.S. team telemark coach, and he was going to take it down the hill in some shorts and mediums and make the ski bend as much as he could. And I looked at it and I go, I would like to show some more, and I think even Greg Dixon talked about it when he was making the announcement about more short swingy kind of turns. So my goal was to start with short swing kind of turns that, like I said, maybe they weren't the appropriate technique for that particular terrain, but this is the terrain we have, and this is what we want to show, is that we believe in all these elements, everything from a more shaped, skiddy kind of scarved kind of turn, in a medium, to a short radius turn, even if there's a little braking action in the short radius turn at the end of the turn. I was pleased to find out that that wasn't completely off base with what the Alpine team wanted to say also. And we could have gone through, it's like, here's how we do our Wedge Christie telemarks. And we just said, yeah, we don't want to do that. In other words, it doesn't matter to us how you do that. I mean, it matters a little bit, but it was one of those deals. What we wanted to say is, this is the top end of the top end of the pillar there, getting to the culmination, in telemark. I mean, most of the telemark lessons that I teach that are Black Diamond telemark lessons, including, at national academies and trainer levels, are not carved turn lessons. That's not what we're doing. We're taking it into Black Diamond runs, which, and most of our necks of the woods, more of the Black Diamond runs are not ones they're not groomed, And so that's what we wanted to say, is that we believe in that too. And I think that is also a bit of it's not completely contrary to what, sort of a European philosophy. But it was interesting. We went out because we went, there may have been some other teams that went off piste a little bit in Levy, but Greg, Keith, and I all went off piste. Yeah. And it is interesting to watch some really, really good skiers from other countries. I mean, they show up on their 6,500 foot race skis, and we take them off piste. And I forget what kind. Keith had somebody in his group, and the other guy from his team goes, "He'll be okay." And he had a yard sale like you wouldn't believe. They're taking into. I mean, that's what they do. They go into those terrains, and that's not the height of skiing for them. And so, like I said, do I want to talk about it? It's like, yeah, I love the fact that the pinnacle of skiing for us in the United States is, sure, carving is a great thing, and tipping them and ripping them, that's fantastic. But it's also being able to take the skis and be able to, highlight fundamentals other than just how much I can tip and bend a ski, and so that's what we wanted to show. And I couldn't, and Greg and Keith said the same thing. It's like, we could not be happier of the way we presented that. So
that's awesome. And one thing I have to chat with you about on this podcast is you mentioned earlier, and I knew I was going to chat about this stuff later, so I didn't keep going with it. You were talking about your prep for the season, and you said, yeah, you're probably thinking the physical part and all that stuff. Yeah, mountain bike. But I know from just the chats that I've had the pleasure, you've come to the East for many trainings for our ed staff, and I was able to go out last year. So it's been awesome to get that experience skiing with you. And I know that you do a lot of prep for your teaching, your knowledge base, exploring certain avenues of how to interact with people. You had some stuff last year. You were talking about just about that, of how your people skills, you had read some stuff and really trying to employ some stuff there. And I want you to expand on that. You said in the beginning, what are you preparing for? I know you've probably been thinking, reading, watching things other than just getting ready for the physical part of the job.
Some of the old adages, about ski instructing, nobody cares how much you know until they know how much you care, and little things like that. I'm always trying to pay attention to those. It was interesting, Dave, because you said something to me about, I remember being in the East and how I built a clinic around the whole idea of take that inside edge of your new outside ski while it's still your back foot. Let your first move be to see if you can drive that inside edge straight down into the ground. And, there's pieces that get brought up for me, every now and then that I experiment with or explore. And PSIA, has, in Rocky anyway, I know that we've had, and I think some of this has gone national with some, biomechanics and research scientists and so on about how people learn. And if you're familiar with the ideas of like internal versus external cues, so when people ski, and it happens in other sports too, it's like, oh, they're getting in their head. They're too much in their head. And this goes all the way back to, if you know Timothy Galloway and Inner Tennis, that was one of the first books I read about skiing, by the way. It was Inner Tennis. It was actually, I read Inner Skiing too, but Inner Tennis was handed to me and said, this is better than, because he was a tennis coach. And it was about not trying to tell yourself how to do things, so when you start to think about what you're doing, with the second metatarsal on your second toe and where you're holding your hands and how much flex you have in your elbows, it's like, that's when your brain's going to explode. Right. And by the way, I do think that there's when you're trying to develop a skill pattern, a movement pattern, you may have to tell yourself how to move to do that if it hasn't happened. But when you start to perform that movement pattern, is there a cue that you can, an external cue that you can start to get with, and so when I went out and did that with the East, a couple of years ago, when I talked about driving the metal edge straight down into the snow, it was really hard not to drive the edge into the snow. It was really hard. And I'm sure you remember this, because people ask, it's like, well, how do you do it? It's like, I'm not going to tell you.
He wasn't, Angelo, either. He wasn't telling us anything.
I believe that.
But it was really hard not to describe, oh, you're going to evert your foot while you do this. It's like, no, I am not going to do that. All right. And trying to create external cues that will, if you accomplish the cue, you'll have to move in a relatively correct manner, so to speak. How do you do that? And so, like I said, there's been some research scientists that I've had the pleasure to listen to, as well as a lady who is a U.S. national team gymnastics coach, Nadine DeBarro or something like that. I can't remember. I also, by the way, I work at Winter Park, but I also work in Aspen. So we get a lot of chances to listen to some of those folks speak while I'm there. And, those are some of the pieces that have been put forth about the teaching. So I'm always looking for, you asked me, this goes back to the question about what, how do I prep to be a ski instructor and a clinic leader and everything else, not just a skier, and not just a chair of the Telemark committee, but that does go to the chair part, by the way. It's like, what can I bring to people this year that will be different than what they've heard? How do I make this training be worthwhile and something that's interesting for you to move forth into the season with? And those little ideas about like internal versus external cues, that would be one of the things. And we're going to see how this comes off the Rocky Mountain training, because it isn't decided at all. but there's been a bunch of talk on the Alpine side nationally about the idea of centerline. And, centerline, I was around when centerline came out, in the mid 80s, it was an interski thing that the US presented. And Telemark certification was in its infancy at that time. I don't think we had Telemark representation. We might have had Telemark representation at interski at that time, but it was very, very new. And so it's interesting because there wasn't really a Telemark centerline model. But that doesn't mean that the concepts of Telemark or concepts of centerline don't apply to Telemark. So that's been, you asked me how I prepare. It's like, that's in the front of my mind right at the moment.
Yeah.
And the fact that I work in the Alpine side allows me to be exposed to both very, very much. So I'm thinking, what's a Telemark centerline model look like? And I'm also really interested to see how people will, how receptive people are to that. Yeah. And that's kind of a thing that Keith and I presented at Interski, maybe not with the centerline model idea, but what we're trying to say is all these things are high performance skiing. They just tend to have biases in one direction or the other, more towards a rotational bias or more towards an edging bias, things like that. And so that's one of the things that's running through my mind. Where's that centerline blend in Telemark? What does that look like? What does it feel like? And I'm wondering with ed staff from all over the country, it's kind of interesting to hear. It's like, I want to hear what their takes are too. Yeah. So.
And Angelo, I don't know if, I know you've been around Jim a little bit and you've skied with him and know and work with the task forces and that. But one of the things that I always get from Jim is to always, when we come back out the next day, try to do better than we did yesterday. And I know you take kind of that motto, Jim. You said it multiple times when I've been around you. It's like, it's not about if you fail or if you don't reach your goal. I think you even talked about this when you were trying out for the national team. It's like, can I go out tomorrow, do a better job than I did today? And then after I do that, can I go out the next day and do the, and I just think that's a cool motto to have. And I know Angelo loves that with continuing to learn and lifelong learners. And I didn't know if you wanted to just mention that before we go into a fun little couple quick questions at the end here, Jim.
No, that's definitely the case. And, trying, in a sense, this is on the negative side a little bit, but I made a mistake yesterday. I'm going to try not to repeat that. What would it feel like if I could get a little more? And then every now and then, and somebody brings something to you. And I don't care, this is my 44th or 45th season teaching skiing, somewhere along those lines. And I had the pleasure, and this is maybe an anecdotal way to answer your question, Dave, was so last year I did the Alpine Emeritus Clinic at our member school management clinic in Rocky Mountain. I had 10 people in my group. I was the 11th person. I told you this was my 45th year this year coming up. I had 10 people in my group. I was the rookie. I had 10 people who have all taught skiing longer than I have. Me and 2 others were less than 50 years. So I had 8 people I had a combined experience total in this group of over 500 years of teaching skiing. And, one of the guys started talking about something, and one of the guys is a good friend of mine from Winter Park who I've skied with. And I remember listening to comments about, we talk about angulate versus inclinate. Do I angulate first and then inclinate? Do I inclinate first and then angulate? I've heard it say, angulate to balance and then incline to create edge angle or something along those lines, or incline to create edge angle and then angulate to create balance. And last year at the beginning of the season, for the first time, it occurred to me, it's like I skied in that clinic in November and I go, I'm done. My season is set. I know what I'm working on all season. And it was just that little concept. And I've always, like I said, I was an off-piste skier. That's what I really like to do. And I looked at these guys because there was a bunch of them in the group and they are avid racers and race fans. And I noticed that that they tend to come inside as fast as they can. They move to the inside as fast as they can, and then work on the establishing of balance. And I'm sure that if people are listening, there's all kinds of controversial comments that come with this. But that was the idea that I saw. And I thought, wow, what if the answer isn't that there's one of these things? What if the answer is there's both? And it depends on what the outcome you're looking for is. And that occurred to me because I knew where my strength was. My strength was, establish balance first and then come inside. And I thought, no, I got to start coming inside faster, and then we'll get to the balance. And so the whole goal is how do I carve better off? How do I ski more like a racer maybe and less like an off-piste skier? That kind of thing. Yeah. And so every day it's like those little ideas are running through my head, and I want to figure out what can I do better today than I did yesterday. And you're always waiting for that nugget.
Angela, I had to make sure this was in there because I know Pete Allison. Hopefully he loves that I really always get the feeling that Jim wants to reflect on his experience he just had coaching us or as a learner, and kind of puts us in that. A lot of times I feel like when I ski with you, Jim, that you don't tell me I have to go reflect on this. It's just kind of the way things are set up, that you set the end and the summary and the end part of our day or our session, that I have to in some way reflect on what we just did and try to learn from that experience. And I just thought that Mr. Experiential Learning, Pete Allison, might love that, Angelo.
I imagine he will, and that's the thing about hanging out with Jim Shaw, I think, is that, it's a lot of fun, first of all, because Jim, you're a fun guy to hang out with, but you're a thoughtful guy. You ask good questions. I think you raise the bar on everybody in the room when you start to talk about what you're thinking about, or you start to ask questions about why we think what we're thinking about, and then it just kind of raises the bar, and that's
thank you.
That's legit. It's real deal when it comes to being a lifelong learner.
Yeah. Yeah, it's been great. And we have to, because we could talk we want you to come back again, Jim. We definitely, I know. And Angelo, I think after he heard about the lead change, and I think his mind's going, he's thinking about things he's going to do on snow. I guarantee he'll have some questions as he's getting ready here for his level 3 this winter.
Can't wait to ski, with you guys at Rocky Mountain training. I'm really excited about that.
Yeah, it's super
this
fun.
Will get you excited. This will get you excited for it, won't it?
It does. It absolutely gets pumped up. So, Jim, thanks so much. And we definitely, absolutely love to have you back again. I can't wait to see you and get some turns in with you in November here out west.
I think I would get an earful from more than one person if I didn't ask Jim to talk about Telepalooza and and the telemark scene and not the East in general, but specifically in our little nugget of the Mid-Atlantic, where we've got what I think is we've got a really a lot of great stuff going on. Jim, I wonder if you'd talk about your experience in Pennsylvania and West Virginia when you come out here.
Absolutely. So it was maybe, I don't know how many years ago now. It's like closing in on 10. But Jay Nation, another ed staff in the East, and now he's also converted to being an ed staff in the Rocky Mountain region. But he told me about Telepalooza at Seven Springs in Western Pennsylvania, and I just looked at him and I said, "Can I come?" And he said, "You would come to Pennsylvania, from Colorado to go skiing?" I said, "Absolutely." And so it was pretty funny. They had some change in management kind of things. And the first year I showed up, he goes, "We got like 50 participants." I showed up the first year, there were 3. And I go, "What the heck are we doing here?" But I'm happy to say over the years that 3 has gone back to, it was close to 50 last year. I don't know. Definitely well into the 40s. And I've seen it growing steadily every year. And it's it's a blast. It's turned into one of the best attended telemark festivals in the country. And, which I know it was before, but like I said, outside of some sort of management change issues that they went through as things went on, which kind of, it's run by the Appalachian Telemark Association. Mm-hmm. And so, that's what I meant by management and ski area issues and conflicts, but that's neither here nor there. That's water under the bridge. Mm-hmm. So it's grown and it's come back to that. And, I see, there's people there that I've skied with half a dozen times. Mm-hmm. And I can't wait to. And I don't care where you're from. I don't care if you're coming from, a big mountain in Vermont or a big mountain in Utah, and you come back, it's like you come to one of those festivals, and this is the way I describe it when I go home. So I go back to Winter Park, and we have 3,000 vertical feet, and they tell me Seven Springs has got 720 or something like that. I'm going, I don't know.
Well, from the top of the antenna, the top of the cell phone. No.
But I look at all the people in Colorado, and I go, you guys think you like skiing? I said, I was standing out there at 8:30 on Saturday morning. The DJ is blaring tunes off the deck. I go, it's kind of a misty sort of morning. I'm not going to use the R word, but it was definitely misty and wet. And the lines are there, and people are dancing, and they cannot wait to go skiing. And you look up and go, that's the top right over there, And it's like, it doesn't matter that, most of your runs are only 500 vertical feet of skiing, and you break them in two, and it's about 30 turns or something like that. It's like they are just cannot wait to go skiing and come to Telepalooza. And the after parties and so on, the Norwegian after party pieces that we have. And, there's a great, there's a great auction. I almost was gonna, it's a Chinese auction. I don't know if I'm allowed to say that kind of stuff, but it is where everybody puts coupons in different bags, and you can win different, and it's good. I mean, there's usually one or two pairs of skis, and there's a pair of 22 Designs bindings, as well as, Lakey poles, and I mean, a lot of good stuff, and people get involved, and it's a nice party afterwards, and a great turnout, and people seem to walk away and they get something out of it. I mean, when you're coming to that also, it's, when you're doing laps on a relatively short hill with decent pitch and good snow, but when you're doing that, it's like, hey, let's focus on something. Because if all you did was just straight run down the hill every time, you'd be bored in 5 runs. So it gives you a chance to really gives you a chance to put something come to the test and pay attention to something and work on something. And it's fun, so, and those things are also, they're springing up in a lot of places. I go to the Telemark Fest, Tony Forrest Telemark Workshop, which is going on for 35 years down in Santa Fe, New Mexico. I started a grassroots Telemark and Telemark Festival in Winter Park. Breckenridge is going to have one this year. I go to the Monarch, Telefestivus in Monarch. My goal is to go to as many Telemark festivals as I can possibly go to. The hardest part is they start to overlap. It's like, I'm going to have to make a choice. Yeah. But
and then you always display your hat. You always display the Motor City Tele hat.
That's Kurt Garcia from Detroit, and, I've been to the Central Region at staff training a number of years in a row for the same reason. And just because I want to go and see what that's all about. And it's like, it is awesome. It's absolutely awesome. If you have not been up to going skiing up at places like Nub's Knob, wow, that's a really cool place to go skiing also. Same kind of deal. It's, 450 vertical feet or something like that, but it's great. And
Motor City Telemark has to be the coolest name of any club anywhere on the planet. I don't care what anybody says. That's a great name.
And if you come to Telepalooza, you'll meet Kurt Garcia in real life, in person, and he will have those hats for sale.
And I'm gonna put in a plug for our guys too, who are really pushing the scene, and that's all. And I imagine you met Jim Cap, but both of you, I imagine, met Jim Cap before he passed, and he was really the driving force in Telemark around here. But since he passed, J Nation, Kurt Burns, Mike Mayer, and then Kurt Garcia comes over from Michigan. It's just a great scene. It's so grassroots, and it's so genuine, and it's generous, and it's just people wanting to welcome other people into this mix, and you just cannot beat that. So anybody who's listening wants to check out the Appalachian Telemark Association webpage. It's telemarker.org, and you can see what they're doing. If you can't make it over, maybe make a little donation or something to support the cause. But Motor City Tele, another great one.
Yeah, that's in early January, right, Angelo? Early January.
Yeah. It's like I think it's 8th and 9th this year. Don't quote me, but let me look.
Yeah. Make a donation, Angelo. You can join the association for like $40 a year.
Well, there you go. You can join.
There's the donation right there.
There's your donation. You become a member.
Telepalooza's January 11th and 12th, 2025 this year.
There you go. Bing. I know Angelo will be there.
I'll be there. Yeah, it's the first thing I put on my calendar. And the second thing I put on is the Southern Nordic Hoedown that happens at Timberline Whitegrass with Chip Chase and Canaan Valley Resort. It's another terrific Eastern PSI event.
That's very high on my list.
Yeah.
Very high on my list to go to. If you have not been down for that, if you haven't been to Whitegrass, it's like, as well as the enthusiasm down at Timberline for Telemark is off the charts also. So
they have a faster lift now too. Last time I was down to Timberline, it was, I think, 17 minutes to the top. That was not anymore.
3.5 now, but beautiful. Perfect North runs that resort now. They've done a beautiful job with it.
Yeah. Great snow making. I mean, they'll be open.
Great attitudes. Yeah, it's great. Chip Chase at Whitegrass is just magic. Just a magical human being.
Chip Chase, Whitegrass, and watch out for the moonshine.
There is moonshine.
Moonshine.
Awesome, man. Super cool. Mr. Shaw, thank you so much for taking the time. We appreciate you giving us some time. I know you're kind of on vacay and visiting family up there over here in New York. So have fun, and we'll see you soon.
Thanks very much. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. Thanks everybody for listening. This has been The Follow Line with Chaos and Company.